the way through the challenge is to get still and ask yourself, what is the next right move?
Welcome to the Unconventional Founder Podcast, where we uncover the mindsets, practices, and strategies used by successful non-technical founders. Our mission for this podcast is to empower you with the information you need to help you get as far as you can. That said, let's get into it. Chad, welcome to the Lightning Pod. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Tell us.
Oh, man. Okay, so I graduated from college in 2003. I was a film major, and I worked at Dell Computers for the first year out of college, and I did just sales on the hotline. You know, you call the 1-800 number, and you got me, and I tried to sell you a computer. I tried to upsell you like software and all that other stuff. I didn't really like it because it was just like I was selling to the average Joe that just saw the 1-800 number on their TV, and I really wanted to do like small business sales or business sales because I was just a tech guy always. But once you started working in a specific division, they didn't really let you like hop around, so I ended up quitting. But then I immediately wanted to start a software company. I don't know why, I don't remember why, but I remember talking to one of my former colleagues at Dell and saying like, hey, let's start a software company. And the couple of years after that, I did manual labor, actually. I worked for my dad's friend who did excavation and septic tank installation and maintenance. And so I was literally on a backhoe with an auger, digging holes, replacing pumps and septic systems. You know, if the lot was too small, just literally out there with a pickaxe. And I'd do that during the day. And I lived at home with my parents for the first 3 years out of college, so from 2003 to 2006, and moonlit, just doing software at night. And back then, it was a lot different than it is now. There was really no like spin it up on Heroku or Versal or AWS or whatever. It was like you had to have a server. And so, you know, I had to buy a co-located server and install all that stuff. And I didn't really know how to code. I had taken computer science in high school, but I hired someone off of rentacoder.com, which ended up becoming Upwork through a lot of different acquisitions over the years. And yeah, I've just been, no matter how many jobs that I'd had, I've always been doing software and trying SaaS in the background. So my very first attempt was a kind of a website builder similar to Squarespace. Didn't really take off, mainly because I didn't know how to code, or I wasn't the developer. And so I couldn't add the features. I was kind of beholden to someone and paying someone else. But I've never really enjoyed coding. It's not that I couldn't code. I never enjoyed sitting down and writing code. I did it later in life. I did it later, like in 2013, 2015. I taught myself Ruby, built something basically similar to Uber Eats, but instead of the delivery, you had to go pick it up. And it was meant for food trucks where I could, instead of having to wait in line, you know, I worked at a corporate office where the food truck would come in for lunch, and then the huge line would form, and you'd have to wait in line, get your food, you'd eat, and then your hour would be over. And so I was like, it would be great if I could just like order ahead and then just go pick it up. So that was the original idea there. But again, learning how to do that and standing it up, you know, this is later when, you know, you could stand it up on AWS or Heroku, and that was a nightmare. So I never really enjoyed that part. I always maybe considered myself more of like an architect or a tailor of software and not as the actual physical builder of software.
So Chad, quick question, especially for our younger listeners. When you say you had to buy a server, does that mean you had a physical server at your house and you had to set that up?
No, well, kind of. So
No.
I had a guy that I hired, another guy that I hired off of Rent-A-Coder. He was 16 at the time, and he was in class. He was in either a high school class or a college class at this time. And he was in some sort of like a development or DevOps program. And I basically bought the parts off of newegg.com. He basically gave me a punch list of things I needed to buy, and I went to Newegg and I bought all the pieces and I mailed them to his house, and then he put them together for his class project, and then he drove to the co-location center that I rented in Tulsa and physically installed the server in the co-location center. If people don't know what a colo is, you basically, it's a room where you like get to tap into the backbone of the internet, and you have your server, which is basically a sideways PC, and you slide that into the rack and you hook it into the Ethernet cords that are run by the center. They make sure that they've got, the heating and cooling, and they've got, direct access to the backbone of the internet, and make sure they've got power and all that other stuff. And so if you don't want to have your stuff in the cloud and you want to manage your own server, you can go that route. But then you have to worry about what happens when my server goes down. You can't necessarily just reboot it. You can reboot it remotely, but if there's something wrong with the software and you have to physically get there, it's a huge problem. And so that's why I like kind of going up the stack and not having to worry. For all my businesses, I shouldn't have to worry about, what operating system is running, what database I'm using, um, what version of Apache or whatever. Like I want to stay as high in the stack as possible. Now, we do have to go down the stack a little bit to get some of the secret sauce that makes us unique in different aspects. And we do that occasionally, but we try not to do it as much as possible, and we only do it when we have to.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We're all getting a nice little lesson on actual physical architecture, so appreciate that. Chad, so you're the founder of Better Legal, which is an online SaaS legal company. Could you tell us about where Better Legal is at today and your journey with moving from traditional development to no code and what that's looked like?
So the way we started Better Legal was basically a bunch of third-party no-code tools. So we kind of went from no code to no code. And the original purpose of Better Legal was just a business formation company. People who wanted an LLC in Texas would pay us $299 plus $300 state filing fee. And then we would physically file it with the state. We would physically get their EIN, and then we would physically generate their legal documents and then send it to them and then notify them of, this is how we started. We notified them of where you go to get your permit and licenses, where you contact the Secretary of State if you want to do a name change, or when your annual due date is for state compliance, and what information you're going to have. And then slowly we started adding things like someone was like, oh, I want to add my brother to be an owner. Oh, I need to change the name because I didn't realize this, or I need to change the address. Or, hey, I didn't realize that my personal address is public to everybody that searches it. Can I use a private address, which is called a registered agent? And so we started adding all these things. And then state compliance. Every state requires that you do state compliance at different times. Texas, it's all on the single day of May 15th. Other states are on the anniversary of the date you filed. Other states are the last day of the month of the anniversary you're filing. And so having to kind of calculate that is easy for us to do through a calculation, through programmatic, but it's not easy to do for, manually. And so we started adding these things.
Chad, a quick question on that. When all of that was happening, right? Did you know all of that was going to happen? Just want to understand, or these things just started to pop up.
It's like whack-a-mole.
Anticipated what the market wanted.
It's like with any business. It's like, I forgot what the name of this term is, but there's some kind of a term where it's like when you're a beginner, you think you know everything, and then the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And so the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, the more you realize the rabbit hole goes to the center of the earth with 15,000 different pathways. And so you just kind of, with any business, you just take whatever the most important thing is at the time and you handle that. And then you just go one after another and after another. And that's why a lot of times when people say, this person copied my business, Well, first of all, they didn't copy your business. Maybe they did, but you know, there are a lot of ideas out there that if it seems like an obvious idea to you, it's probably obvious. There's 6, 7 billion people on the planet. If it's obvious to you, it's probably obvious to a bunch of different people that are reading the same tweets and the same articles and watching the same videos as you are, and the pattern matching in your brain is like, oh my God, this is a genius idea, and you think it's yours and you gatekeep it, and then 15 other people are working on it. It's like, well, 15 other people came to the same conclusion that you did watching the same information. A business is more than just the idea, is the execution of the idea. Everybody only has this limited amount of resources. What, how do you prioritize what you're building and what you work on? And I think a successful business is the great idea, an entrepreneur that has a lot of grit, because people will just quit. Most people will quit. Most people quit way before. And so the top tier of entrepreneurs are the people that just do not give up. So lastly, it's prioritizing properly. If you prioritize the wrong things early on, you're going to run out of resources, you're going to run out of money, you're going to feel drained, that things aren't working for you, and so then you quit. But ultimately, a successful entrepreneur is the person that just doesn't quit. So, um, so going back to this, we built all this, but it started with no code. It basically was Webmerge, Typeform, Asana, and Zapier. And I built a workflow. It took me about a month to build this conditional logic and all this stuff and hooking everything together. We kind of grew.
You had paying
Our
customers
first,
generate revenue for that.
our first 1,000 or 1,500 customers, yeah, on just that stack, yeah. And
It's awesome.
we were on that stack until we launched everybody onto Salesforce. So we were kind of, at least the first 1,000 or 1,500 customers that was a combination of that and ripping and replacing Asana out for Salesforce. Because one of the things we figured out early on was just because someone filled out the form before we actually sent it back to them, or the completed legal document, sometimes they had to make a change, or the state would reject the name that they inserted, and so we would have to make the change prior to generating the document. But the way it was originally set up was that it just generated the document, and so we would then have to go into this 40-page legal document and find the pieces that were changed and then send it to the customer. And so by switching from Asana to Salesforce allowed us to then alter the information that was inputted into the legal document. And so then we basically built that out, and we're like, okay, well, we need this, but then we want to have a customer portal. We want people to log into betterlegal.com and see their information, download their documents, see their EIN, uh, and those things. And so we explored possibly using Salesforce, but even if using Heroku with Salesforce as the back end, there was this thing where it was like up to 10,000 rows. You could have up to 10,000 rows, and the pricing was very specific. But once you got over 10,000 rows, it was call us for pricing. And it was like, anytime someone says call for pricing, I'm like, no, you just lost me as a customer. Like, you either know what it costs or you
Yep.
don't. And so that's,
Yeah, it's also like saying, hey, we're about to
oh,
gouge you.
it, every one of those, because I've been a salesperson and I've worked with salespeople in those companies, that is 100% what are you willing to pay? What is the value to you? Here's the price. And you're like, ooh, that's too expensive. And they will half the price, 70% off. Like, they don't know what the price is. The price is whatever you will pay for it. Uh, so that's why, yeah, figure out your cost structure and how much margin you need to run the business and tell me what it costs, and I will say yes or no. But anytime I've got to get on the phone with a salesperson, I'm already not going to buy. I might get on the call just because I'm interested to know what they have and see, what I might be looking for in other competitors I end up buying from. But I'm never going to buy from a salesperson ever. That's when we decided to go custom. We raised a little bit of money, friends and family, raised a little angel round, and then we hired developers. We hired one and then two back-end developers, originally one front-end developer. But this front-end developer was a nightmare to deal with. He was just very difficult. I would give him a priority list of things to build. He promised me 10 hours a week. He would give me maybe 2 or 3 for a month, and then all of a sudden he'd give me 15 hours all of a sudden one week, but he wouldn't actually handle any of the things on the list. He would say, I just refactored the website, now it's 15 milliseconds faster and the code is a lot cleaner, or I just moved it over to this new framework that's brand new and super interesting. So I just rewrote everything in that. And it's like, this business doesn't run on your pet projects on learning how to be a coder. It works on people paying money for features that they are requesting, and you are not giving them to me. So then I hired another front end developer, and this person was fine, but still same problem where it's just not getting enough time. It was always just like, it was a black box. Code is a black box. You can't see, like, I can't go in and see what's happening because I can't read code, or I can read code, but like, once you get to a certain level of complexity, it just becomes a nightmare to go find stuff. And so finally, I got rid of one of those guys and I hired a little agency where it was a product manager and a junior developer and a senior developer. And this is all front end. All of my problems have always been front end. Back end developers, I've always had a lot of success with. And luckily, with Bubble is the front end, and then I get to use back end developers to do the custom stuff. So I hired this front end team, and then it became the game of telephone. I would tell the product manager what I wanted, then he would hear something different, and then have the junior developer build it. The junior developer would mess it up, and so the senior developer would have to come in and I'd have to pay 4 times as much for the senior developer. And I ended up paying like 2 or 3 times more for this like efficient team than just having one good developer. So I was paying upwards of like $10,000 or $12,000 a month for front end development only, for part-time people that are only working a handful of hours a week. So then I kind of, someone had told me about Bubble.
Chat, if you don't mind me asking, in that moment, how were you
Oh,
feeling?
the business was going to fail in like 6 months. Like, we were running out of money. Like, we were burning through cash. We had about, at the time, like 150, $180,000 left in the bank, and burning 20 to $30,000 a month, and 12,000 of that was front end development. And so early, or like a couple of months before January 2022, I basically slashed a bunch of stuff. I just started like cutting things that were unnecessary, canceling things that, services and this and that, and streamlining the team. But then I had to figure out how to get rid of this huge, again, if I'm burning 20 to $30,000 a month, and 12,000 is just front end developers, I can basically, if the loss in 1 month is 20,000, that's 2/3 of the cost of that loss. So I was like, I need to wipe that away. And so I started developing in Bubble myself. Eventually, found an amazing Bubble developer that does all of our work now. But it allowed me to kind of,
How did you how did you find Bubble, Chad? And what were you I don't know, what were your thoughts on it? What was going
Bubble
through your
actually
mind?
has this quote of mine from an interview they did with me that they are pushing really hard on social media right now, that my wife shows me every time she's on Instagram. She's like, look, it's you. Basically, I was building something else as a side business. It's just as a hustle, just see, I hadn't developed anything in a lot of years, and I wanted to build something and I would be hands-on with something myself. And I've been hearing about different no-code tools and how they've evolved. And I have tried everything under the sun. After coming from the world of Salesforce for many, many, many years, I spent 7 years working the Salesforce ecosystem. I knew what no code was capable of because the largest companies in the world use Salesforce, which is no code. And so I knew it was capable of it, but I didn't understand why nobody was going after like the low end of the Salesforce market. And so every tool, Asana, Airtable, Glide, Adalo, you name it, they all were some level of junk that like allowed you to make something pretty and cool and like show your friends, but nothing that was actually functional as an app that did real work and that was a productivity tool. And so I tried Bubble because other people were talking about it, and I built this app myself using a couple of courses that either Bubble put out or Pablo and Kieran put out, and watched those on a speed run at like 2x speed just so I can understand where everything was. And then I just had like an epiphany that was like, this is the tool I've been looking for. This is that Salesforce, but for everybody else, where it has the capability of Salesforce. It allows you to do everything that you could want to do, provides the data layout, allows you to have data, they should really rename data types to tables. That's what they are. Lets you have the tables, lets you have the drag and drop of like old school Dreamweaver or Microsoft One Page where you could like build the interface. And then the glue in between was the how do you connect the design to the database? And even in like something like Airtable, you couldn't create like a button that did something. Or at the time, I don't know what it's like now, but at the time you couldn't like create a column that was like click this button and go do this thing and bring back the data and fill in the blanks. And so this was the first tool that had all of those components wrapped up together in an elegant way. Within a couple of months, had a working version of 5 years worth of custom code that we built Better Legal on with custom code. And so it went from literally 1 year from the moment we started developing in Bubble for Better Legal to 12 months later. Not only did we have a full replica of what we had in Better Legal with all the little edge cases and all the little details, but we also got to remove Asana as a project management tool. We built our own version of Asana within Bubble that connects to our own data, so people aren't having to hop between multiple apps. But also we had the front end, so we had the website, and the website got to pull from all the data that we had about the Secretary of State, the phone numbers, the contact information, the hours, the pricing, all that other stuff. So we're able to programmatically build a bunch of pages that are marketing pages that is the same information that we have in the database. And so it just works in this beautiful little ecosystem.
Amazing. And how did that make you feel once you started to course correct? How are you feeling at that
I mean,
point?
it was, it really was an amazing feeling. It was the first month that we had a profitable month. That was really kind of what made it feel real. And this year in 2023 is going to be right now we're at like a loss of like $9,000 for the year versus like 2022 a loss of $150,000, 2020 $400,000, the year before $600,000. So we went from like losing $600,000 to right now year to date having lost $9,000 with the goal of even if we're like $250 in the black for the year, that's a profitable year. But being able to go from that to this um, is a hugely amazing feeling, and also knowing that if everything goes wrong, I can still get into Bubble and I can handle stuff myself. I'm a technical enough person to where, I'm not an expert at Bubble. I'm not as good. I'm not as specialist as my Bubble developer is, but I can still get in and fix things that need to be fixed. Previously, it would take a week of communication back and forth between my front end developer, where it's like we're designing a page and it's like, okay, well, that doesn't look right. Add more padding here. Can we get more stuff above the fold? I don't like that color of green. Can we change the shade? Now we just get most of the way there, and then I can go in and I can tweak all those little details and not waste someone else's time with like me just trying to make it pixel perfect. And so just so many different things just makes it a superior way of doing things. And I see people on Twitter talking about, can it scale? It's like it's on AWS. Is AWS scale? You know? And even if it kind of runs a little slow,
Yep.
it's going to get better. They're working on it every single day. So these people that want to code by hand are the same people. It's like, do I want to text my mom in Morse code because it's more challenging? Or do I want to just send her an emoji because it expresses more emotion in one image than 500 different dots?
That's an amazing analogy. I've never thought about the Morse code. I think I just want to call out something, Chad, about what you just said before. In that you're now at the table, right? You're in the war room. You're when things go wrong, because if founders listening in here, if you're a software founder, things always go wrong. Like every single week, software. There's no such thing as bug-free software. And that I think that was one of the key things that you just said that resonated, was that you're at the table, you can get in the room, you can understand, you can help the developer. You might not do all the work, but you're there. I think that's a really big, and it's also very liberating as a founder. Yeah. So
Mhm.
thanks for calling that out. How big is Better Legal today? And a lot of people say, no code doesn't scale, don't do it. Like, Better Legal's a relatively large company at the
Not by
moment.
people, but by customers. We've got, if you count our new contract analysis software, we've got over 17,000 users. We've formed over 16,000 businesses. We do
Amazing.
over $2 million a year in revenue. We've got 6,500 active subscribers. We are weeks away from $1 million in ARR.
That's awesome. I would say that's a pretty stellar
But that's all
business,
with
and
we
much
probably have
much
less
more
than a
than
dozen people, and most of the people on the team, every single person on the team, including myself, is a contractor. So we have 0 employees. Most everybody on the team is part-time, and so yeah.
it's awesome. So, Chad, I know that you're working on a bunch of other projects, just obviously on the side. What's your advice to founders, especially non-technical founders who want to start a software business today? They have an idea, but they're not sure where to go. What's your advice to them to get started?
Find something that pisses you off. If you follow me on Twitter or X, you might see that I just have all these ideas and then I'm developing all this stuff. But these are all ideas that I have literally had for the last 15 years that I just didn't have the capability or resources to build. And now, because of Bubble and also big AI evolving to where it has that it's now just an API call away, those two things, no code and AI together, has basically made it possible for everything that I've been thinking about for the last 15 years to actually come to life. And so I'll give you an example is, we've talked about my comms HQ, that's COMMSHQ.com. And that is only starting out as a video to written content how-to guide article generator where you can pump in a 15-minute or 60-minute long video, whether it's a screen recording, a interview with a customer, or a board meeting, whatever, or comparison video, whatever that is, it will convert that into the equivalent in written form with video clips embedded in the appropriate spot. So that information, being able, because I communicate 90% of my communication with my team is in Loom. I record a Loom, I send it to Discord, I get a Loom back, and we just communicate in Looms back and forth all day. But some of my Looms are 15, 20 minutes long where I'm talking about something. And so if I send 4 of those a day to somebody, I've stolen an hour of their day from them just watching videos. Now they can watch it at a faster speed, but there is some information buried in the video, and I talk normally and I add little things like, oh, and don't forget about this. Oh, and there's this little thing here. Someone's going to have to go back and rewatch the video a ton of times or just miss things. And so I talk naturally as if someone is standing over my shoulder, taking copious notes. But the fact is, the person that is receiving that is going to get the big points. And so, can we convert those videos where it's easier for me to record the video? If I'm onboarding you with a new piece of software, we've got a new intern coming in or a new hire, or I want to tell everybody how we did for the quarter, it's super easy to do that naturally with a video, with slides, or with just pointing and clicking and doing that. But then for the receiver, it might not be that easy to watch. And I just happen to go off on tangents all the time and provide all of this contextual information that may or may not be relevant. And so now using Comms HQ, I can let the AI decide what is relevant and extract all of those different detailed points and put it in a nice organized fashion. So I don't have to be succinct anymore. I can talk to my heart's content and let the AI figure out what is necessary and put in the video clips. But that is just the very first part of this. So the reason, this is an idea I had previously, but one of the reasons that really kind of became a trigger was we have 87 videos at Better Legal, internal videos for the team, how to file an LLC in Nebraska, how to file an LLC in New Hampshire. Because the team, while they know how to do all the big states, that are high volume, when you get to Hawaii once a quarter, it's like, oh man, how do we do this? We have a video, but the video is 15 minutes long, and so becomes burdensome. Or maybe they have a very specific question about that task. They remember everything except for one thing. Are they going to have to go find it in the video? And so now we can convert that video into a detailed how-to guide. All of the information that we transcribe and that we turn into the guides or the articles is already in a vector database. And so we can turn on chat pretty quickly. And so we have a demo already in our Better Legal Discord where you can ask it, what are the steps to file a New York LLC? And it will give you a bullet list. And so then that evolves into, we've built a contact center in Better Legal where we've replaced Twilio Flex, which is like an intercom, if people are familiar with that, or Crisp Chat or whatever. It's telephony, it's voice, it's SMS, it's chat. And so we have replaced this multi-billion-dollar interface. We're still using Twilio's APIs, but we basically have built our own contact center in Bubble where I can call out, I can receive calls, I can put people on hold, I can receive SMS, I can talk to chats, and I can pull up a customer's information and see all their Stripe information from that same interface. Once the call or the chat is done, it runs it through AI and gives me a one-line summary and then a short summary of what the conversation was. So pair that video processing with the telephony and telecommunications together, and now you have all of your information about your company and how to do various things, where it can suggest things to the agent that is answering the question to the customer. So I've got 60 videos on YouTube that go over all kinds of the most popular topics that people ask us. Now, once those videos go through Comms HQ, when that question gets asked in the contact center, we can show a little suggestion, like here's a suggested answer, click here to just send it to the customer. That's step one. Once we know that it's working really well, then we don't really need the agents working anyway. They can start doing the physical work that is what the customer needs versus answering the same question 500 times and just being available to answer that same question 500 times. And so it gets into just a full kind of communications engine.
That's amazing. And so if I'm going to summarize what you said there, find something that pisses you off or a problem that you have, be able to use no code, and if you're interested in AI, use that as well, and just run with it.
Yeah. So to distill it, basically, again, I went off on a tangent, which is why I need AI. Is I had these problems using existing tools at Better Legal, and I said I can do this better. So I used Better Legal as a client. Think of me as like a contractor or an agency, and I built a one-off specialized tool for this and learned how to do it. What are all little details that you don't know about until you get into the weeds? And then now that I've done that once, let me rebuild it again with all of the information that I know, all the things that I did wrong, all the things that I did right, rebuild it again. And now it's a SaaS and it's a product, which is what I'm doing basically in every aspect of Better Legal. Is if I build something, I build it as an agency, building for a one-off client in a very specific way. And then I think, what are the things in here that I, in my life, in my personal experiences dealing with other people and other companies, can I extract from this that are going to be common for everybody, and then rebuild it in that perspective.
Love that. Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming on the pod today and being so transparent, especially on X. If you don't follow Chad on X, we'll put his link in the show notes. And yeah, I think on behalf of everyone in the no-code community, love how transparent and how much you share on X. It's really awesome.
Appreciate it.
Hey there, before you take off, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this podcast, I would love it if you could 1, hit that subscribe button, 2, rate and review the podcast, and 3, share it with someone who you think could get a lot of value from. Thank you so much again for listening, and have a great day.